good morning, everyone. It's great to, well, I don't really see you, but I'm imagining that I see all of you as I look into this camera. Thanks for being with us this morning, and a special welcome to anyone who's joined us since Mass began. I want to begin my homily with a question. What does financial giving and the Holy Trinity have to do with each other? Now, I realize that sounds like the first line of a joke, doesn't it? Like, two priests walk into a bar. Or it sounds like the first line of a bad joke, or perhaps even the beginning of a riddle. But today, I seriously want to ask that question. Yeah, I'm going to go there. What does financial giving and belief in the Holy Trinity have to do with each other? Well, let's start perhaps with the Holy Trinity. Today, as we mentioned, is Trinity Sunday. And for many of us, there are a lot of memories associated with belief in the Trinity. Perhaps, if you're like me, a lot of fuzzy memories that have a lot to do with trying to understand how 3 could equal 1 and 1 could equal 3, and thinking, this doesn't make any sense. Or thinking about 3-leaf clovers or something like that. But at the heart of our belief in the Trinity, which has been revealed to us through Jesus, through Scripture, is this essential truth, that God is a community of persons. God is a community of persons, of distinct persons who are essentially united and interrelational. Our God is not a solitary God. God is one being, but not solitary. I know, it's kind of weird. But you see, the church doesn't say the Trinity means you have to go against basic rules of rationality, that 3 equals 1 and 1 equals 3. No, we're saying the one God is 3 persons in the one God. God is a community of persons. The second truth that this feast day tells us is that the Trinity is missionary. The Trinity is missionary. Now, what does this mean? Well, it means that this community of persons, this divine community of persons, in a sense, cannot be contained. It overflows, in a sense, not of necessity, but by choice, the choice rooted in love, to create, so creation of the universe, and in the renewal of creation through redemption. And that happened when God sent forth his Son. The second person of the Blessed Trinity was sent, took flesh, became human for the sake of the salvation of the world. Jesus is the sent one. Do you know that the New Testament refers to Jesus as the sent one 51 times? Either Jesus referring to himself that way, or other passages referring to Jesus as the sent one. To be sent literally means to be a missionary. Jesus is the primordial missionary who represents the missionary heart of the Trinity. Okay, so 2 essential points about the Trinity. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, what the heck does that have to do with financial giving? Let me get there. Before we get to there, let me talk about the church. You see, what we believe about the Trinity directly impacts what we believe, or what we perhaps should believe, about the church. You see, just as the Trinity is a community of persons, so too is the church a community of persons. Just as the Trinity is missionary, so too is the church. See, the church is essentially a community of persons. Individual, particular persons, but persons who are essentially bound and united with one another. You see, there is no such thing as privatized Christianity. It's not Christianity. Christianity is personal. It's not private. It is essentially communitarian. The church is a community of persons of which you and I are a part of. And just as the Trinity is missionary, the church is missionary. Jesus passed on his mission to the church. As the Father has sent me, so I send you. We are a sent church. Now, about 20 years ago, I read a book. And this is where I start talking about the giving thing. This book was by an author called Charles Zeck. It was published in the year 2000, and it's entitled, Why Catholics Don't Give and What Can Be Done About It. Now, he was looking at a study of U.S. Catholics, so perhaps this doesn't apply to Canadian Catholics, I don't know. But he looked at a sample of research on U.S. Catholics in the late 80s, and he looked at the percentage of giving by U.S. Catholics, percentage of household giving, in comparison to other Christian traditions. And the chart on the screen shows his research. Catholics were right there. And you might think, well, that's not so bad. At least we weren't at the bottom. But the two denominations worse than us were Christian Science and Universalist Unitarians, or Unitarian Universalists, which technically are not even Christian. So we didn't do too well on this compared to other Christian traditions. And the author asked this question: why is Catholic giving so low? Why do Catholics contribute so much less to their church than their neighbors who belong to other Christian churches? Are Catholics cheap? Are they less religious? Are they ignorant? No, it's a good question. No, I have my own opinion about this. I don't think that Catholics are less generous than any other Christians. I think that is demonstrated over and over again, especially in the realm of giving to support the poor. Catholic giving in that area for issues to support the poor and justice is often extraordinary. But the evidence presented in this book is quite clear that when it comes to giving to the local parish, that the Catholic giving is not the same as it is in all other Christian traditions. And the question is, why is that? And I think it is really related to our understanding of the church and our understanding of God. Now, before I go any further, I'm just going to pause for a second, because I know that some of you are thinking, Father James, what the heck are you talking about? Why are you talking about such an unspiritual matter as giving when it's a very spiritual day, the Holy Trinity and financial giving? But, see, Jesus had a lot to say about money. Jesus talked about money more than any other topic, more than he did about heaven, hell, or prayer. Do you know that there are 2,350 references in the Bible to money? And Jesus helped people to see how money affected their spiritual lives and eternal life. He did this all the time. In fact, remember, he said, where your treasure is, there is your heart. He gave a direct link between our use of the resources of this world with our money, with where our hearts would be. And so, based on the teachings of Jesus, our attitude towards money is one of the most spiritual things that we can talk about. And so, let's go back. Remember, the Trinity and the church is a community of persons, and it is missionary. This is of the very essence of the church. But sometimes we fail to truly take ownership of these truths. Let me start with the idea of the church as a community of persons to which you and I are essential members. Think about that in relation to our giving. Isn't it often that when we talk about giving to the church, well, I just said it, we talk about giving to the church. But here's the question. If I am the church, what does it mean to give to the church? Doesn't our language betray what it is that we truly believe? If I give to the church, then obviously I'm outside of the church. I haven't properly taken ownership that I am truly a member of the church. See, rather than speaking about giving to the church, I much prefer to talk about giving to support the mission of the church. Do you see the difference? It may seem slight, but I think it's very, very significant. Because if we give to the church, then unconsciously we have put ourselves outside of that community of persons and have not truly owned our membership in the church. We give to the mission of the church. Now, what is the mission of the church? We heard about it in the gospel reading this weekend from the end of Matthew's gospel, Matthew chapter 28, and the verse known, or the passage known as the Great Commission. Jesus has risen from the dead. He's about to ascend to the Father, and he gives to the nascent church their marching orders. He says this: "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you." You'll notice here it's one of the earliest occurrences of this Trinitarian formula that we still use today when we baptize. But at the heart of this task, this Great Commission, is this command to be a church that goes. Go to all the nations, go to all the world, and make disciples, help people to encounter me and to become my followers, and then to baptize and to teach. That is our mission. But it's true that over the last number of decades, as popes and bishops have called us to take ownership of not just our membership in the church, but to take ownership of the mission of the church, we have struggled with this. Because after centuries and centuries of mission being something that a few professionals do in far-off lands, we struggle with seeing that that could actually apply to each and every single one of us in our present places. Yet the call to mission is constantly being proposed to us. In our own archdiocese, the very reason behind the amalgamation of parishes that we have undergone, which has been a very difficult experience, is ultimately for the sake of mission. So that we become a missionary church, that each of us own the mission, and we're not just what I would call a maintenance church. Now, I want to compare these two terms with you for a second: maintenance versus mission. It's not that one is bad and one is good. They're both good. We're called to maintain. Maintenance means we maintain primarily the people, the parishioners. We maintain our resources, what we've been given. But generally, when we have a maintenance church, the focus often can be on buildings. Isn't this what we experienced over the last number of years? You know, we have 13 buildings in our parish, and we put a lot of time and energy and resources into maintaining buildings. And that's what a maintenance church does. But a mission church, rather than focusing on buildings, focuses on people. Rather than staying in, a mission church is about going out. And a maintenance church often focuses on the basic services that we have as a church. So masses, funerals, and sacraments in general, as long as we do masses at the appointed time and do funerals and do sacraments, we're all good. We're good. That's maintenance. But listen to what Jesus said. Jesus said, "Do this in memory of me," of course. Have masses. He did tell us to baptize, do sacraments. But he said, go out to the world. Make disciples of all nations. So a mission church, it's the ultimate mission. The sky is the limit. We're called to change the world. And so when it comes to giving, in a maintenance model, it tends to be minimal. I mean, let's be honest. The goal for financial giving in a maintenance church is to pay the bills. Pay the light bill. Keep the door open. Stop the roof from falling in. Whereas a missionary church, the scope is enormous. It's about a maximum. You know, the more eggs we have, the bigger the omelet we can make. And so we don't give to the church. We give to the mission of the church. And literally, when we buy in, literally, we will be bought in our hearts, because where your treasure is, there is your heart. And this brings us to another truth that I want to highlight for you today. It's this, that it's more about our need to give rather than the parish's need to receive, even for the mission. It's more about our need to give. I found this out myself. 24 years ago, I was a brand new, newly ordained priest, and around this time of year, I began my first assignment at St. Mary's Cathedral over in Halifax. And the rector of the cathedral was the now Bishop Martin Curry, who is now retired and lives in this location. It's funny how what goes around comes around. I remember it was literally my second day on the job, and Father Curry, or Monsignor Curry at the time, met me in the hallway, and he handed me a box of envelopes. And I asked what still is probably the dumbest question I've ever asked in my life. I looked at the envelopes and I said, what am I supposed to do with these? He almost had a fit. He actually yelled at me, use them. Well, since that time, I started using envelopes, and I've been committed to giving and growing in my giving over the years as a priest. But before that moment, I didn't give anything to the church. I had somehow given myself a pass. I had excluded myself. I figured, I was giving up marriage. I was giving my life as a priest. They didn't pay me all that much. They weren't going to miss it. So I had given myself permission to opt out. And even though I was an ordained priest in some strange way, I had not bought in to my essential membership in the church, and certainly had not bought in financially to the mission of the church. I realized then that I needed to give for my own sake. And there's another reason why I realized I needed to give and why I need to constantly grow in my giving to the church. It's because I don't like it. See, naturally, I'm going to tell you a secret. Naturally, I know it might be a shock to some of you, but naturally, I can be selfish. I know. I actually prefer to look out for myself first. And if I do give, my tendency is to give from what's left over. Once I take care of my needs and my wants, if I get anything left, I might give that. I'm inherently selfish. Giving is always painful. Giving in a sacrificial way is always painful to me. But here's the thing. Generosity is like a muscle. If it's going to grow, we've got to exercise it. The only way to become a generous person is by being generous. And I've learned over the years that I absolutely have a need to give and be generous for the sake of my own spiritual health. So, what am I asking today? I'm asking that we take a step together to become informed. I believe that being informed is the first step of taking ownership of our essential membership in the church and ownership of the mission. This morning at 10 a.m., every single parishioner who's on our mailing list, every person on our mailing list received an email with a link to our financial report. It's also on our website and will be printed soon to be available to those who are not online. Just want to quickly tell you about this report. We're calling it a stewardship report. Why is that? Because the gifts that you have given to us, and by the way, thank you for your ongoing support. Even this week, I'm amazed at the envelopes that are coming through the door, and as you continue to support what we do, give to the mission of the church. That we are stewards of your gifts. But also this word stewardship reminds us that each of us in our own lives with our own resources, we're not owners, we're stewards. God has given us everything, and we are stewards of those gifts. So we have in this finance report information that is clear, relevant, and simplified. It basically is the annual report to parishioners for the year 2020. It presents the budget for the year 2021 and the first quarter report from January to March for 2021. And the overall focus of this report is on mission. And I'd like to give you a little glimpse of what this looks like. And so it's very nice photographs. There's a letter. There are testimonies, stories. There are charts and tables and more photographs and more color and more charts and little interesting tidbits of information and more pie charts and a prayer at the end. And so we've been working hard at this. The Finance Council has been working hard at preparing this for you. And so we are asking that you receive it, that you spend time with it, that you read it, that you absorb what is in there. Please be informed, because being informed is an essential step to taking ownership. And until we take ownership of our essential membership in the church, until we take ownership of the mission that the church has, this Christianity thing is never really going to make sense. Until we realize that there is indeed a connection between financial giving and the Holy Trinity. And that's not a riddle, and it's not a bad joke. God bless.